Hi, Elliot Howsie. How are you today?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And first and foremost, I want to say thank you for again coming and always, answering the call when Weston Power calls you to ask you to come out and educate us, on our civic series. So I want to say thank you again because you're not, this is not your first go round with Weston Power. So I want to say thank you for that.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'm always willing to share, or anytime I can try to be of assistance, I'm all in. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, all right. So, now of COVID, we're going to do it like this, which I kind of like a little better. I really do. And I don't have to go into the long history of Western Power because, like I said, you are not you're not new here with
Right.
Western Power. So, I do want to let you know that I am recording.
Okay.
And again, thank you for coming, and we can get started.
All right.
All right. So, our first question to you is: can you tell us who are you?
Okay.
Who you are?
Wow. So I am well, some would say Judge Elliot Howsie, but I'm Elliot Howsie. And I grew up in Wilkinsburg, low income community. I always tell people I'm the son of a janitor. My father was a janitor, my mother was a homemaker. And so, we grew up in a low, we didn't know we were poor at the time, but we were poor. But we had a lot of love in the house. And my father and my mother collectively, made the necessary sacrifices to get me into Central Catholic so that I could get an education at Central Catholic. And after graduating from Central, I applied to one college because I didn't really know if I wanted to go to college. I didn't know anyone that had gone to college. I didn't know anyone that had graduated. I was the first in my
Yeah.
family to attend college and ultimately graduate. So there just really wasn't a lot of guidance in that regard. Although my mother and my father always kind of pushed me towards education because they
Mhm.
never had, any formal education. So they thought it was important for me to attend college, but no one could really say, do this, do that. They just
Yeah.
said, just go. So I applied to one college, which was Indiana University of Pennsylvania. I was fortunate enough to get accepted where I attended that school,
Mhm.
and I obtained my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in criminology. But unlike a lot of students, while I was attending school for my graduate studies, I had a full-time job, and I was fortunate enough to
Mhm.
get a job working at Schumann Center. And so I was working with the children who were court involved, and they had a lot of those children had perpetrated crimes of sexual abuse. And
Mhm.
so I was working with those children while attending school full-time. Graduated from IUP, decided I wanted to go to law school, applied to Duquesne University School of Law evening program. But during that time, I was still working in social services. I was working at an agency called Alternative Program Associates. And what that program did was it did in-home family therapy. So we worked with families that were court involved due to mental health issues, drug and
Mhm.
alcohol issues, homelessness issues, and any issue that was affecting that family's ability to remain intact. We worked with those families. So I did that from 9 to 5. I
Mhm.
went to law school from 6 to 9. And then from 11 to 7, I worked at an organization called the Wells Tales. I don't know if you're familiar with the Wells Tales.
I
Now,
have heard. Yeah.
okay. So I worked at Wells Tale in the independent living program. So I worked two full-time jobs while going to law school. Um, Graduated from Duquesne and got my first job as a law clerk for Superior Court. Not necessarily crazy about that job. I wasn't really well suited for just sitting behind a desk,
Yeah.
research and writing. Not really. I didn't feel that I was best suited for that position. But I was fortunate enough to get what I always refer to as the best job that I couldn't afford to keep, which
Mhm.
was I was a prosecutor in the district attorney's office. And so, Terry, if you let me know if I'm a
Wow.
little too long-winded, but let me
No,
tell you a
no,
little bit about that.
please educate us. Yes.
Okay.
Tell us. Yes.
So that was the last place I wanted to work because, like so many people from our communities, I felt like law school was an opportunity to change my life, to be impactful for my family from a financial standpoint. So I
Mhm.
was trying to get a job at the big firms, and for whatever reason, those opportunities just did not pan out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so here I am with 3 degrees and an attorney and unemployed for a year. And
Oh,
so
wow.
right. So, now you have doubts and second guessing your decision
Mhm.
to even go to college. Um, and if I can share this story briefly, I was actually in the courthouse watching a homicide trial because I knew one of the witnesses. I wasn't working, so I
Uh-huh.
just went down there to observe. And during a break during the trial, I approached the prosecutor and just started to talk to him about the case, and he encouraged me to apply. But again, based on what I knew about the district attorney's office,
Wow.
that wasn't really, necessarily where I wanted to work, because one, it didn't pay enough, and I had student loans, I had a mortgage, I had
Right,
bills,
right.
and I was unemployed for a year. So I really wasn't interested in the DA's office, but unfortunately, it was the only job. Fortunately, I guess it was the only job that I could get. So I had an interview, and I had a 10-minute interview, certain that I didn't get the job, but for whatever reason, Claire Capristo, who was number 2 in charge at that time, she saw something in me, and she gave me an opportunity. And I'll tell you what, I love the job, not because of the things that people think, because I never viewed the job as my opportunity to lock people up and put people in jail.
Okay.
I really do believe, Terri, and I believe this. I believe that there are people in our communities who just do stupid stuff. And I think we have to deal with them differently than the people that do very bad things and cause harm and or danger to the members of our community. So I worked my way into the child abuse unit. So I prosecuted perpetrators of physical abuse and sexual abuse of children. And so as coming from as they say, the hood, I had no conflicts with that, because I don't understand how people bother kids. So I loved the job. I enjoyed every moment of it. I learned so much. And I had a lot of autonomy. I was able to give people breaks that deserved it. I was able to divert people. So all the things that I felt like my role as a prosecutor, I felt my role was, I was able to do those things, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But at some point I got married and I had kids, and it was just time to move on. And I worked as a defense attorney for about 6 years, criminal defense, personal injury, some family court cases. And then I was fortunate enough to become the director, the first African-American director in the history of our county, and the first African-American male in the history of our state to have my job as a director of the PD's office.
Oh, wow.
So that was a great opportunity. And healthy dose of naivete and just plain old cluelessness. I took the job thinking that, we could just help some people, not understanding some of the challenges that the office face, but more importantly, understanding the things that office had done to people from my community. It just had not consistently put his best foot forward. And to some extent, it was destroying lives. So I felt that it would be an opportunity for us to change the office around, help some people out. Then I would figure out what was next. But then I was fortunate enough to get appointed to the Court of Common Pleas, where I'm now serving in the criminal division and the family division. And I'll just tell you this, I was initially assigned to the family division, which I was fine with that. I was really enjoying family division, but because we lost a number of judges, and you know the story behind that, some of our judges we lost, and they asked me to come over to criminal division. And I said, you know what, I believe that our court system is in need of reform. I don't believe you can reform it being on the bench. You got to get in the game. So criminal division is kind of that path to reform. So I was eager to do that work, to begin that work, right? But the catch was, I didn't want to walk out on my families and family division, because I knew that they would have to wait for another judge. They would have to wait for the judge to get up to speed. And I just didn't feel that was in their best interest, right? So I opted to keep my family court caseload while doing my criminal cases. So I'm actually in the busiest division in the criminal division. Right, so I'm in the busiest division in criminal court, but I'm also still doing my family court cases, because I committed to working through all of the cases that I had to make sure that those people got responses and were able to conclude their custody matters, their divorce issues, conclude those issues sooner than later. So I'm kind of doing double duty, but I believe it comes with the territory, right? Happy to
Well, what I heard, I mean, that's true determination right there. From the very beginning, of, like you said, you didn't have the guide of, what do you do when you get to college, or, but you did it, so, wow. And please do not think that you're going too long. You're here to educate us, and we want to get to know who Judge Elliot Howsie is.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So now, can you tell us why this unique time right now, with these 9 seats being open, should be important to the people in Allegheny County? What's so unique about this?
So what's unique about it is just the number of openings. In my time, I've been in the court system for well over 20 years. And this is the first time I've ever seen this many openings at one time. So that's very unique. That's unprecedented. And so I routinely hear I hear two things. I hear people say, we have an opportunity to reform the courts and reshape the courts. And
Yeah.
with 9 new seats, we can really change the mindset of the court. And that's true. I mean, that's almost a fourth of the judges that are in our courts, right? So when you think about that, it's definitely a game changer. But then the other thing I routinely hear is that judicial races don't matter. Because at the end of the day, most people that are voting don't envision a situation whereby they could either end up in criminal court or they could end up in family court. So what they think is, there's 9 openings, whatever, put any 9 people, they'll all do because it's not my issue. I'm not going to be in court. And I always say, yeah, you know what, that's statistically, that's not accurate. But you may not end up in court. You may be fortunate enough to dodge those bullets, as they say, and never end up in court.
Yeah.
But the problem is that the likelihood that your children will not is remote. The likelihood that your neighbor's kids will not end up in court is remote, right? So when you think about the impact that our court system has on people's lives and the decisions that are made on a daily basis, judicial races matter more than any other race. And they matter because, one, when we look at our judges and the decisions that they've made historically, the impact that they have on people's lives, that's a game changer. But even if you don't think about the fact that, we give out more probation in Allegheny County than any other place in the state, and Pennsylvania leads the country. So you may say, well, probation's better than jail. But the problem with probation is when we impose such lengthy periods of probation, it does nothing more than ensure that at some point in time, someone will end up in a jail cell for a violation of that probation. So it doesn't allow people to get their lives back after paying their debt to society. So we're destroying lives. But when you think about custody and you think about divorces and you think about school choices, like if you have 2 parents who are divorced and they're arguing over custody, they're fighting over custody, you as a judge, you can make a decision that will determine where that child or ultimately which household that child will grow up in. When you talk about parents wanting to relocate to other cities, take the children, leave the children. So these are heavyweight decisions. But even if people don't necessarily appreciate the significance of those decisions in that space, then understand what our court system is doing to your tax dollars. When we talk about the fact when we talk about the fact that we currently spend $103 per day per inmate to incarcerate people for nonviolent, low-level offenses that will never, ever, ever result in a period of incarceration when they're resolved, because you're going to get more probation. So you're not getting a term of incarceration, but we have people who sit in jail for 8 months at a time, losing their jobs, losing their houses, losing their families, right? Not able to attend school, not able to go to drug rehab. All of those things, housing issues, all of those things happen when we ultimately resolve those cases. We give that person probation and let them out of jail. So it's counterintuitive and counterproductive. It's very destructive to put people in jail for nonviolent offenses that don't require jail time when they're resolved. So one, think about the destruction in terms of people's lives. If people are supposed to repay their debt to society and move on, our system's not currently doing that. We're not equipping people to do that. But then the other problem we have is when we talk about the wasted resources, we're spending $38,000 per year per inmate to put people in jail for technical violations of probation. Take a fraction of that money and give them drug treatment. Take a fraction and give them mental health counseling. So we're just not our system is not good stewards of our resources. And I think that judges need to be more mindful about the way in which they fashion sentences, the way they deal with probation violations. We should only detain people when that behavior is escalating. If you're on probation for a misdemeanor and you get arrested for a robbery, detention might be a suitable response to that. But if you're on probation for a DUI or a misdemeanor and you get caught with a controlled substance, another misdemeanor, nonviolent offense, we shouldn't detain people. It's a waste of resources and it's destroying lives. And so we really have to take a look at that. So when people say these judicial races don't matter, they matter directly. But even if they don't matter directly, they matter indirectly because we're spending your money and we're not doing a good job of spending it well and increasing the likelihood that people won't come back to our system. Because I think that's the goal. At least that's what we say the goal is, right? So we need to do that. We need to make decisions in a way in which we accomplish that goal and not creating situations that increase the likelihood that people will come out. And if I can tell you one quick story, I got a lot of stories.
Please.
There was a gentleman who It was one of the first situations I learned about as a director of the public defender's office. He was arrested and he was unable to post a monetary condition of bail. And so he was required to post a $500 bail. He did not have the $500. He was gainfully employed, but he didn't have the $500. And so when he couldn't post bail, he had to stay in jail until his case got to the Court of Common Pleas. And at that point in time, the Commonwealth came to this gentleman, came to the PD's office and said, hey, this young man, Joe Smith, we don't have witnesses. We don't have the evidence to prosecute him. So we're going to withdraw your charges and you're free to go. And his response was, go where? My house is gone. My car is gone. My job is gone. My wife left me. My family is in complete disarray. Go where? And so we can't have a system that's doing that and then expecting those same people to succeed on probation without drug treatment, to succeed without mental health counseling, right? And lessen the likelihood that they're going to come back, because it doesn't work that way. So the system destroyed this gentleman's life for his inability to post a $500 bail. So that's the first problem. But the second problem is we spent about $25,000, $28,000 to put him in jail to then let him go because of $500, not because of our concern for our safety or the likelihood that he would reoffend. He wasn't a dangerous person. He just didn't have $500. So that was one of the first things that I took steps to address as a director of the PD's office, because I'm like, this is not okay. It's not. So
and what you have stated, that's one of the main reasons that West End Power is so involved with these judicial seats, is because, like you said, it affects a person, people, communities. It's a snowball. And this is something that we have to set for the people that's coming behind us. I agree. If it don't affect me, what type of human am I that I know it affects my neighbor, and I don't step forward. So I'm glad you brought that up. I really am. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we have been hearing a lot about, race, especially when we're in Pittsburgh. The report came out with Black people in Pittsburgh, predominantly Black women. So we've been hearing a lot about race, and which it should play a part, in these 9 seats. But can you tell us some other extremely important values that we should be looking to as well? We have been talking, like I said, a lot about mental health, race. What other values that should we be focusing on when we're thinking of these 9 people that we are ready to put into seats to represent Allegheny County?
So I think, and I've been asked that question a number of times. I think that we should be concerned about, obviously, your experience, right? Some people will say, you can't get district attorneys, you can't get public defenders. There's these 2 schools of thought. I'm not so much focused on what work you did. I just want to make sure, I think we should make sure that judicial candidates have the experience, right? But I'm not so much concerned about where you work. I'm more concerned about your understanding and your ability to assert yourself, because what you're signing up for as a judge is to make some very important decisions. And so you get your caseload, and there's not always a lot of, there really aren't any training wheels. So are you going to get in and understand the system, understand the consequences associated with your decisions, understand the generational impact that those decisions will have? Or will you get in and just defer to what has been done historically, because that's what we've always done? So I'm not saying, we have a lot of very talented judges on our Court of Common Pleas. We do. But at the same time, I think if there's anything missing, it's perspective. And I don't think that people fully understand what it means when that person shows up and they say, hey, it's my first listing. I'm here. I haven't missed a court date, but I don't have the money for an attorney. I would like to get a postponement because I'm saving up money to pay my attorney, but I've already communicated with my attorney, just getting the money together. Can you give me a little bit of time? And the judge says, well, since you don't have an attorney, I'm going to revoke your bond and put you in jail because I know the PD's office will represent you if you're in jail. Okay, job's gone, house is gone. And again, keep in mind the likelihood that that offense will result in a term of incarceration when it's resolved is none. Like potentially, there is no chance that you're going to get anything other than probation. So when you're putting people in jail, to make sure they have an attorney to then let them out of jail to serve probation. Why do they have to go to jail in the first place?
Yeah.
It's just too destructive. But I think we have to talk about the person's experience, because that's important. They got to know what they're doing, right? They have to have an understanding, because you're making decisions that will impact people's lives. You have to have some legal experience. But for me, I think you need to have some perspective. You need to understand the vast majority of the people that end up on the front steps of our courthouse are due to social issues, drug addiction, mental health issues, homelessness. So that covers a lot of the people that come to that front door. So if you don't understand your decision, like, so when you impose a sentence of 5 years probation and you have random urine screens without any treatment, get jail cell ready. They'll be back. Get it ready. So we have to have an understanding of the issues that bring people to the front steps of the courthouse, right? We have to understand the consequences of our decisions. So when you have a person who's in a drug treatment program and they took the monumental step of signing themselves up and getting into a treatment facility to address their lifelong addiction, do you impose a sentence of 90 to 180 days because that's the standard range sentence? Because if you do, you can do that. It's a legal sentence, right? It's a legal sentence. But now they just lost their bed in the drug treatment. They'll probably be homeless and they'll probably be back on drugs. So now are they better equipped to complete your probation? Or does it make sense to say, hey, because you did something to better yourself, I'm going to give you probation and keep up this great work? Because that right there saves all of us money. It doesn't destroy lives, and it gives the person what they really need, an opportunity to get better. And so we need to have an understanding of the issues. We need to have an understanding of our ability to make decisions and our ability to exercise that discretion, right? Because if you're doing what we've always done, because we've always done it that way, we can't fix it that way. You have to get an uncommon result, you have to take an uncommon approach. So you have to do things a little bit differently. And so I really believe that, so like for me, I have a social service background. I understand the issues that bring people to our court system. And it's not always that they're just bad people. Most of the time, that's not the case at all. So we have to look at the social service issues. We have to look at, our approach when we talk about our discretion and how we will exercise that discretion. We have to be confident in our decisions. You have to understand what you're doing. You have to have some experience. You have to be comfortable making difficult decisions. Because Terri, I'll tell you, one thing I've learned, some people don't do well in that space. Some people don't do well with making difficult decisions. So what do? They just kick the can. They delay. And what I found is people can handle a difficult decision that you have to make, even when they lose, as long as they feel like the process was fair. And it needs to be fair. As long as they feel like, they had a voice, you gave them every opportunity to be heard. There's only one answer and there are two potential answers, only one answer. And it may be right for someone, wrong for the other one. But when people can participate in that space, they do better with the answer versus just ushering people through the system. Because we don't have attorneys, because we don't have the resources, right? So when you push people through the system without an attorney and you're giving them decisions, you're handing out these decisions that are going to have such a monumental effect or impact on their lives, you're not allowing them to even understand what has happened. And I don't know about you, but growing up in Wilkinsburg, I know so many people that have been through criminal court countless times. And they can't begin to tell you what happened, how it happened, why it happened. They stand there, they nod, they take the plea, and they try to get a minimal sentence, and they try to move on with their lives. But they don't really understand what's going on. They don't really understand the expectation on probation, right? And the same thing applies in family court. People don't understand what the judge's decision is, what the factors are, the things I have to consider, things you have to put forth as far as evidence to help me make this decision. So I pride myself on taking as much time as it takes, because I know you don't have an attorney, and I'm not going to treat you any differently. Our courts are not accessible to low-income communities. They're not. It has always been my commitment to say, hey, I need you to understand, this is what the decision I'm making. This is the law that guides that decision. These are the things I have to consider. This is your burden. This is his burden. And, and I do all of that, because then at the end of that process, people do better with the decision.
Understanding. And so, the whole thing of experience is huge, because when you were talking, what kept popping in my mind is, when you keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, is called insanity.
Right.
You
Right.
know, so
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that you brought that. You know, we can't keep kicking the can down or keep, you know, addressing these same conversations and topics 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Right.
You know,
Right.
when we have a chance right now to you know, get some people in there that is understanding the forgotten communities, the well-off communities, the, you know, the whole circle and ball of all of that. So thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
My my next question to you is, how can the Court of Common Pleas judges, and you have answered this really in most of your answers, how can the Court of Common Pleas judges reshape a person, family, community? And I think you went well into that. If you want to tap into it a little bit more, or do you feel that you answered that as well?
I'll defer to you. I mean, if you want me to say a few more things, I can. If you want me to move on to the next question, I'll defer to you.
No, please. If you have more, yeah.
Well, here's what I will say. I will say our judges' decisions have a generational impact. So when a judge decides to detain that gentleman who's the head of his household, understand he's going to lose his job. Understand that housing may become an issue. You know, his ability to provide for his family may become an issue. So when we do that, make sure if jail is supposed to be for the worst of the worst, then how come 50% of the people there are for probation violations, and then another vast majority of the people are there, you know, because they had got a monetary condition of bail and they couldn't post. So if you look at our jail budget and our jail population, violent crime is down, but our jail population's up. So if we're putting the worst of the worst in jail, and that's who jail is reserved for, then why is violent crime down? The jail population's up. Violent crime's down, right? So I think that we have to understand the decisions that we're making as judges. And so the other thing we have to be mindful of, you know, when you decide to sentence someone to a state sentence, understand that you've taken a person out of that family. Know that those people in the family will incur anywhere from $13,000 to $15,000 worth of debt that they will take on by putting money on the person's book, visiting, phone privileges. So it's typically about $13,000 to $15,000 is what it's going for in terms of the expense that family will endure, as well as that person's out of the household, right? So now when you talk about those children, it increases the likelihood that those children will grow up in a low-income community. And we all know the issues that plague our low-income community. So I'm not saying some people, for the safety of our communities, some people are dangerous. But I'm saying we shouldn't be putting people in jail for probation violations for nonviolent offenses. We should be giving them treatment because it doesn't serve anyone's interest. So I just think about that generational impact, but also think about the decisions we make in family court. When we talk about custody, when we talk about dividing up assets during a divorce, understand it. When you talk about a divorce, the average litigation expense for a person going through a divorce is approximately $20,000. So when you talk about that 20 grand up front, then you talk about dividing assets, alimony, dividing pensions. Now, the people in most instances don't have the money to even get divorced. And then we have to talk about custody. So then what does that look like? So it's just, we have to take a look at how we're dealing with people. And I think we have to make more informed decisions. We can't just knee jerk and throw someone in jail because they missed a court hearing. I had a gentleman the other day who came to court. He missed his court date. So everyone said, hey, you got to put a bond forfeiture. He forfeited his bond. He didn't come to court. Low level offense. He was looking at probation, put him in jail. He missed court, but he came to the courthouse for another matter, another issue. So he wasn't running. He just had his days mixed up. I said, I'm not detaining him. I'm not putting him in jail to then give him probation. And he was in a drug treatment facility. He had finally gotten a bed. So what does he lose as a result of me saying, you should have been here the other day, you missed your court hearing? Plus, everyone knows it's a pandemic. Most of the people think the courthouse is shut down. I'm not putting him in jail for that. It's counterproductive, it's destructive. He loses his bed, right? He's sitting in jail, and we pay $103 a day when what he needs is drug treatment, which is what he's getting. So I just believe we have to have judges that are making decisions like that, because we just can't we're destroying lives doing things the same way we've always done it.
Yeah. And so one thing I do want to, because the example you made was you know, the man got arrested, and the man, you know, so there's women too that
Oh,
come,
sure,
you
sure,
know, so
sure.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that you continuously remind us of the money. Hold on for one sec. The money that we are spending, um, you know, that we are wasting, I
Yep.
should say, not spending, that we are wasting, you know,
Sure.
with our men and women getting, sorry about that.
But it's absolutely women too, because in most instances, women are the head of our households in our communities, right? So it's men and women. But I'll tell you what it is consistently. It's all of the people in low income communities.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
And I'm so glad you got your eye on that. And I'm sorry for my dog. My mom's aide is coming
I
in.
have dogs too. It's fine. It's
So
fine.
sorry about that. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much. You know, because I do want everyone to, you know, please hear when you're saying, Queenie, please hear when you're saying how much money we are wasting,
Yep.
you know, and we have to start focusing on this. We
Absolutely.
really have to, you know, put this in front of us of what is going on. And I also wanted to comment when you had said earlier, you know, that people don't come out to vote, you know, for it, and we have to change this. If we want change, we have to be a part of it. And
Absolutely.
that's just, you know, so that's, I'm just so glad that you're making so many points, and I'm trying to grasp them all. But I wanted to make sure that I did not let that slip past me, to make sure that everyone hears that. So let me see. My next question to you, I think um my next question is, what is it that every community should want to know about a judge of court of common pleas, and why?
So I think it's and I do appreciate this about our court system. We have been very we've been moving, and it didn't just start. We've been moving historically towards this place where we want to be transparent. So I think we need to know, you know, if you have a district judge who's routinely imposing a monetary condition to bail, we need to know about that. We need to
Yeah,
know what are the demographics, right? Is that something you're doing for members of one community? Is that one race, one gender, you know? So we need to
mhm,
know about those decisions, because I think in life we should have report cards. This is one of the few jobs where there's really no report card. And the only report cards you get is every 10 years if you get retained or not. But I think
yeah,
we should have that information. Judges need to have that information. Judges need to be aware of the decisions, because you can't do better if no one's saying, hey, you understand, you have a propensity, you have a tendency to do X, Y, and Z in this
yeah,
space. That's something you need to look at. So I think we need to have the information. I think at the same time, I think judges need to do a better job of making sure that the people that appear in front of them understand what's going on.
yeah,
I think as a member of the community, you need to know who your judge is. You need to know their background. You need to know, you know, who these people are and what are their tendencies. You know, are they kind of the people who take a zero tolerance approach to crime? Because if they do, then what that means is anytime you violate my probation, regardless of the type of offense it is or the type of
yeah.
violation is, I'm going to put you in jail. And that's not
Wow.
it's
Yeah,
counterproductive, and it's destructive. So you need to know what's their mindset and their approach to crime. Do they understand this is more of a social service issue, or do they feel like these are just people that can't stay out of trouble? Because if you believe they're just people to stay out of trouble, your response is going to be very different and very measured compared to the
yeah,
person who understands the social service issues. So you just need to know, who are you electing? We can't just allow people to come up and say, oh, you're such a nice person. Oh,
yeah,
such a
yeah,
nice lady. We need to know, what are you talking about when you talk about reform? What does that mean? You
yeah,
know, as my campaign manager would always say, unpack that. What does that mean when you talk about reform? You know, where are you going with that? Tell me. A gentleman asked, I thought it was a very profound question. He said, everyone's talking about reform. Everyone's talking
mhm,
about changing
mhm.
our court system. Let's pretend you got the job day one. Tell me the first thing you're going to do to make it better. See, that's the kind of stuff we need to be talking about.
Yeah, yeah,
Plan.
yeah,
What's the plan, right? Can't just use catchphrases. We can't just say, oh, we got to make it better. We got to reform the
yeah, yeah,
court.
yeah.
So yeah.
So let me ask you this. Can you tell us how can someone get that information on a judge of, you know, the history, or, you know, how do we get that report card?
Right. So one place you can get it is the Bar Association. They rate judicial candidates for temperament, legal acumen, experience, and they determine whether or not they feel that person is someone who has an experience and a history and a resume, excuse me, and a background that is suitable for them to be to go to the bench. Because as attorneys, they want to know who they will appear in front of. So they're really engaged in that process. But I think the other thing you have to do is, and this is kind of the gift and the curse of this pandemic, these discussions, these forums are so powerful, because you can put people in front of people and say, hey, there's my dog, I'm sorry. And you can say, hey, we got some questions, versus, you just allow someone to show up and give you their 3-minute or 5-minute stump speech.
Right.
And we said, what a nice person. Hey, I got some questions for you. Let's talk about the issues. Let's talk about how you'll deal with these situations. Hey, I understand that this has been an ongoing problem in my community. What will be your response to that? What do you attribute that problem to? Because if you don't understand the problem, you can't come up with a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just think these kind of forums are so powerful because they're question and answers. And so a lot of the committees are moving towards those discussions where they're saying, we'll hear your speech later, but I have a few questions for you. And I think it's huge, because people, you can say what you want in a speech, but you got to answer those questions.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, but I also think too, I think we have to do our research. We have to, do our research on these on candidates. Look at their website, look at their information, look at their background. Understand, is that someone that you would say on a bad day? Is that someone I want to preside over my child's case? They're legal. Those are the things. I think those are the conversations we need to have as members of a community.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much. And there's so many organizations and committees who are now, going towards let's have a question and answer conversation. I know VEAM is doing something, BPEP, Women League of Voters. So it's, a lot of good work is coming out, and we're getting that. I strongly believe that the community is getting the information that they need. They're getting educated and they're listening. That's the big part. You know what I mean?
And I think they have to, because I think at the end of the day, some of these communities will be directly impacted by that judge. So you better make sure you put the right person there, because they're going to deal with your community more so than others. I mean, that's just facts. I mean, the numbers don't lie. It's the truth. So you need to be informed. We have to be informed.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Okay. My next question to you is, how are you unique?
Okay.
So what can you offer for a fair and equal justice?
Okay, I got that. That's a great question. So I think the thing that makes me different is I come from the community that have been one of the communities that has been targeted. Low income community. There's a lot of crime, but it's also, and some would argue, some of those communities are overpoliced. Right. Some of those communities, they're low income communities. So there are a lot of the issues that precipitate people becoming involved in our court system, whether it's mental health, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's just, violence. I mean, I grew up in that environment. So I understand the issues that result in people showing up on the front steps of our court system. So I understand that. But I believe too, because of my social service background, I understand if those issues go unaddressed, how they become a pathway to the court system, right? I get that. But I also think I have a unique perspective in that I sat on the side of the table as a prosecutor, but I also sat as a defense attorney. So I've had to defend people's rights, the rights of the accused, but I've also had to prosecute people who've done some really bad things to kids. So I understand that there are two sides to every story. I've been responsible for presenting both sides. So I understand there are two sides to every story. I understand the significance of the decisions that we make, because as the director of the public defender's office, I had to make some decisions that weren't always popular, but they were for the best, for the best outcome for our clients. So I've had to make difficult decisions. I'm even-handed because I've done both jobs, but I'm also not someone who's afraid to be assertive in that space to try to change things. So if it's about going against the grain or just not accepting the status quo, that's not on my resume. Couldn't do that as a director of the PD's office. We couldn't change it by doing that. I'm someone who I'm not looking to be. I'm not a contrarian, but I'm also ultimately I'm always looking for ways for us to get better, and there's always ways to improve. And so
that's important.
And I believe that you have to be prepared to have those difficult conversations. I think you have to be prepared to take a path that is less common, which is not always popular. It's not always
Yeah.
easy for people, but you have to be able and willing to do that, because if you aren't, then you'll just kind of fall in line and do what's always been done.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like, my background, I feel like my upbringing, just my social services, just all of the jobs that I've had have just been like a step in that process to me getting to this space where I really believe
Yeah.
that I'm well suited to be a judge. And I also believe, given the fact that I'm already doing the job and I'm already, sorry about that,
You're
I'm already
fine. You're fine.
doing the job and I'm already beginning the process of reforming it. So the things that people were talking about and the things that need to happen, I've already begun to do it. When you look at
Yeah.
sentencing, when you look at probation violations, you look at detainers, you look at pre-trial detention for monetary conditions of bail. I'm letting people out of jail that should be out. So I'm doing all of those things that everyone's talking about doing if they get the job. I've been doing it for the last year and a half, 2 years. So I think that's
Yeah.
the other thing that makes me somewhat unique.
Thank you. Thank you. And like you said, if we're talking about reform, here's a way to reform the system, So thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Now I think you told us this when I asked you who you were. So tell us about being the first. So let me make sure that I have this right. You are the first Black person to be chief of the public defender's office in PA. And so is that correct?
So let me clear that up. Okay, so I'm
Okay.
the first African American in the history of Allegheny County to be appointed as a director of the public defender's office. I'm the first African American male in the history of the state to have my job.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you, how has that shaped you? And can you give us some obstacles and accomplishments in the same sentence that stand out for you?
As a director of the PD's office?
As being the first, yes.
Okay. So again, I said I had a healthy dose of naivete and just downright cluelessness. But I had been watching that office for my entire career, because as a district attorney, I worked with those PDs every day. As a defense attorney, I worked with them whenever we had co-defendants. So I always say I was an outsider with insider information, because I had been watching the office my entire career. But with that being said, I knew that there were things that we just weren't doing well. And I knew a lot of people whose lives had been, I'm sorry to say, but had been destroyed by some of the attorneys in that office who just didn't have a regard for the clients. They didn't, and so I really believe that, showing up there, everyone wanted to make it better and everyone would get on board, and we would just, a year later would be fixed. And so change is difficult for people. Change is difficult, and requiring people to show up and do their job, and in some instances advocate for people who don't look like them, who don't come for their community, who they have no understanding or no commonality with. Sometimes that's tough. And so I had a lot of pushback, and I'm going to be honest, we had some knockdown dragouts. And I don't apologize for them. They were necessary, because you can't change it without it. And I always said, being a public defender is a great job, and it's a well-paying job if you don't plan to do anything. But if you got to show up and get ready for trial and meet with your clients and make sure you investigate their defenses, then the question becomes, is it a great paying job? Is it worth the aggravation? Because in some instances, you're advocating for people that most of society has kind of get thrown up their hands or turn their back on, right? I mean, there are people who are most vulnerable, don't have a voice. And once you get on the other side of that criminal justice system, it's a different world. And so there were just the work that we had done historically in that office. It was destructive. It was destructive. And for me, there was no time to talk about changing it. There was no time to develop a strategy for changing it. It needed to change. Not another person could plead guilty and be promised that they could get an expungement at some point in the future. When there's no legal mechanism for you to get an expungement after you plead guilty. There was no more time for us to have, there was no time on the clock for us to continue to send our least experienced attorneys to deal with the matters of most significant consequences. We couldn't do that. We couldn't continue to do that. So we had some dust ups, and I don't apologize for it, because people's lives were being destroyed.
Well, we thank you for it. We thank you for it.
It was necessary. And there were a lot of people who, who to this day don't necessarily get down with me like that. But I feel like, either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. And if your stated goals and objectives are to do the things that make it better for people who come from our communities, then what's the beef? What's the beef? Because that's what I'm trying to do. So I don't apologize for that. But we did some phenomenal things in that office. I mean, I'm so proud of the work that we did there. I don't know if you'd like for me to go through a few, but so many.
Yeah, give us. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the first things we did was we realized that we had an office of 126 people, but there were only 4 supervisors. So I was able to get that budget increase. Now, I want to point this out. The budget was increased at a time when every other county department was having their budget cut. We were able to get that budget increased. And by doing that, we were able to hire an additional, I think we ended up hiring an additional 12 maybe supervisors, which increased accountability. But the other thing we did was we hired a full-time manager of training so we could train our attorneys, because we used to just say, get in there and let me know if you have a question. We can't experiment with people's lives. So we had a full-time manager of training. We had standard operating procedures. We had just training programs. But I also was able to start a recruiting program, because what we used to do is we couldn't interview people for our office until after they passed the bar. So what that meant was after Pitt and Duquesne took the bar, those students took the bar, we would get what was left over. And we got some really good candidates that way. I'm not knocking that. But we couldn't go and get people right out of law school who we could say, hey, come to Pittsburgh. We can offer you a job now. You'll take the bar, but I'll start you the day after the bar and we'll just wait for your results. Wow. We can train you while you're waiting for your results. So once you get your license, you hit the ground running because you already been here and we already been paying you. So you're winning because you got benefits, you got a salary, but we also win because we got people out of law school versus waiting to see what's left over. So we were able to increase diversity that way. We were able to go in this region. So we were down as far south as Virginia, as far north as Boston College, recruiting attorneys. And we've gotten some really phenomenal, capable attorneys that way. But in-house, some of the things that I'm the proudest of is that when I told you about the gentleman who couldn't post a $500 bail. Right. He sat in jail. So the first initiative we did was we developed a process where we would go to court. We call it motions court. We would go to court right after the preliminary hearing or right after bail was set, and we would address bail. And so, Terry, we had an 80% success rate. So what that meant was every month, 80 to 90 people would get out of jail because of our bail modification, our request to modify bail. They would get out of jail when historically those people would have sat in jail for anywhere from 6 to 9 months waiting to get in front of a judge and either plead guilty or get probation or get their bail addressed. So we were getting people out of jail. It saved lives, but it also saved money. So that was one of the first things we did. Another thing we did, which was huge, just with the training and the things that we did to better equip our attorneys, one thing that happened as a result of that is our acquittal rate went up and our appellate rate went down. So we were appealing less cases because we were losing less, right? So that's huge. So we were getting better outcomes for our clients, right? Saving lives. But another thing we did, which was a true game changer, was the first step in the criminal justice system when you're arrested is preliminary arraignment. That's where your bail is set. Historically, public defenders have always taken the approach that because there's no witnesses there, there's no victim there, there's no confrontation, we don't have to represent a client at a bail hearing. And my position was, forget about confrontation. This is going to determine whether or not that person sits in jail, gets out. This will determine whether or not the posture of that case looks like. Because if you're in jail when your case is overcharged, we're swimming upstream, right? Versus if we can get you out at that first listing, now we're probably in a better position for an earlier resolution and a more favorable outcome. But the other thing we did, Terry, we hired full-time social workers. So we put the social workers with those attorneys at that bail hearing, that first step in the process. And as a result of that, we were able to say, okay, this person's been arrested. Here's the bail recommendation, but we have the person, we've addressed some issues of homelessness. We have the person involved in drug and alcohol treatment, which is really why they're here. We have the person involved in mental health counseling. We got all these things, these resources tied in, and we got these things in place for this person, so let them out. And what the district judges would do is they would routinely say, we're going to release you, go ahead to your treatment. when we would come back for that first listing, now the case is in a more favorable posture to be resolved earlier. So we were getting more favorable outcomes, getting the cases resolved sooner, but we were saving lives because people weren't just sitting in jail because they didn't have the money to post bail. So I'm very proud of that. But it
Game
just,
changer.
yeah, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And because of that, we had an 18% reduction in jail admissions. So you think about all the people coming in the front door, that the PD's office just has to wait for them to see if we can help them later. We were getting in front of it. And because of our efforts, we were able they resulted in an 18% reduction in jail admissions. So just that. So I'll give you one more thing we did. And then the other thing is, I told you, we have a problem in Allegheny County where we give out too much probation. The probation sentences are too long. And it destroys lives because it increases the likelihood that 50% of our jail population will consist of probation violations. So what we did is we said, look, probation officers, we know your caseloads are too high. You got like 250 people on each caseload. You can't watch the people that weren't being watched, right? The people who are the who's who on your caseload, they're the ones you should be watching, not the person with the retail theft, not the person with the possession. So let's talk. Let's figure out a way to lighten your load and keep these people from sitting in jail later. So what they did was, because of the work that we had been doing across the board, they came to us and said, hey, look, every month, we're going to give you a list of 60 to 75 people that have completed 3/4 of their probation successfully without any infractions. And we agree that they should be off of probation. They give us a list. We file the motions. We send the motions to the judges. The judges will sign the motions. So that was basically 60 people a month that we would get off of probation. Now, it did two things. It wasn't so much that they had some regard for our clients, but it was really more self-serving. They lessen their load, and their workload makes them more effective, but it helps us because it gets our clients out of the way of sitting in jail. So you think about the probation department is giving us information to get people off probation. Game changer.
That's another game changer.
Game changer. So we did that. Another thing we did was we set up an expungement clinic, because people don't necessarily realize that once you're arrested and charged with a crime, even if the charges are dismissed, you still got those charges will say disposition unreported, and it could affect your housing, it can affect your employment. So we developed an expungement clinic where people, as soon as their cases are resolved, the pandemic has kind of slowed that down a bit, but as soon as your case is resolved, we will go and then file a petition to expunge your charges that didn't result in a conviction. But the other thing we did was we got the other stakeholders to the table, and we said, look, we got to waive the fees. We have to waive the fees. You have to get a state police. You got to get a rap sheet, which is like $22, but it takes 6 weeks. Then you got to pay the filing fee, right? Which I think was $212. So we did all of the fees, got everyone on board. So we were just mass filing petitions to expunge. And what it means is that people can now go get a job. They can go get, because those are barriers to people moving on and not coming back. So I'm proud of that work. We did so many things in that office. We were game changers, and I'm proud of it. And I don't apologize for the people who weren't on board. I'm sorry, but we just have to agree to disagree. It's important work.
Wow, thank you for that. Thank you so much. And a lot of people, I'm sure, did not know a fraction of that. Now I do know that before the pandemic, I do know the expungement program was a very hot topic, was a conversation piece. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, couple more and we're gonna wrap this up. Now, you also answered some of this too, but I want you to go a little further if you can. How should the courts handle drug addiction and mental health in prison sentencing? Because like you said, mental health and addiction.
Right, hand in hand.
Right.
I agree. So I think that the court should take the approach that when those issues are present, to give someone probation and expect them to complete their probation, 4 or 5 years of probation, the game is rigged. They're not going to be able to do that, right? So, without treatment, they are going to continue to use. Despite their best efforts, they will continue to use. And if you're having random urine screens, a random drug test, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when they will violate their probation. So I really think we should do a better job of creating situations where people can have shorter periods of probation, because that does two things. One, it gives them the ability to move on with their lives and put the matter behind them, but it also hopefully gives them the the ability to get tied into some form of treatment, because we have to treat these issues. We can't incarcerate our way out of addiction and out of mental health issues. Incarceration is not the solution to those challenges. But the other thing that happens is by giving people shorter periods of probation, then if, God forbid, the person does relapse or the person does come back with a subsequent drug case or a retail theft, then they'll deal with that case on its own and they'll probably get probation. But if you have them on probation when that new arrest occurs, they get detained, they sit in jail for anywhere from 6 to 9 months, and it just destroys lives, and we waste money. And the money that we could dedicate towards treatment is being spent on incarceration, and no one's being helped, or no one's even better for it. So I really believe that by giving out shorter sentences of probation for nonviolent offenses, it helps everyone. It allows people to move on. And if they should fail or fall short, then they will end up in the jail cell for a probation violation, right? And that's the goal. People should not 4 and 5 years later be coming in and out of jail for probation violations. If you can complete two years of probation, you know, you need to move on with your life. And if you come back later, we'll talk about that later, but it shouldn't be a violation of a probation for a nonviolent offense years early. So we have to change that.
I know I've met a gentleman who had he had 20 years probation. Like,
not uncommon. It happens more here than any other place in the country.
Like, absolutely. You know, so these are the things that we have to keep in front of us when we are talking about these 9 seats. You know, like you said before, we cannot continue with, oh, he's so nice or she's so nice, or we have to, this is game changer.
It's too important.
Yeah.
And the potential to destroy lives is there. And, you know, we have to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right seats. I mean, we can't reform the court by doing business as usual. We can't.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Tell us something that no one knows, or very few people like your family know about you, that you maybe an accomplishment that you had done or something, and you don't brag about it or you don't talk about it.
Okay. Do you know who Marshawn Lynch is?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. My kids always talk about Marshawn Lynch, great football player.
Yeah.
But Marshawn Lynch, he was one who never really gave press conferences.
Right. He started getting fined for that, didn't he? Right.
And then at some point, he just show up and say, "I'm only here because I don't want to get fined. You know, I'm only here so I don't get fined." He would never give a statement. I'm kind of like a background guy. So as Marshawn Lynch would say, I'm about that work. I'm not about that talk. I don't spend a lot of time bragging. I mean, those in the system, I think the people in the system realize that the court, the public defender's office is nowhere near where it used to be. The quality of the work, the quality of the attorneys, it has changed, and I'm very proud of that. And so I'm not one who really, you know, I don't like doing press conferences. My thing is, you know, if it's as important as you say it is, then you should know what we're doing. And if you don't know, then maybe it's not as important as you say it is. But I'm not going to come and find you because I don't spend time bragging. Either you know or you don't. But one thing that I'm extremely proud of is when I graduated from law school, I was the first person in my family to go to college and graduate. So when I showed up at law school, I was like, what am I doing here? If I could have gotten my money back from my student loan, and if I could have gotten a refund, I'm telling you, I would have left Duquesne. But once I enrolled, there was no refund. So I was like, stuck. But with that being said, I just realized that,
was that out of fear or?
Absolutely. No one looked like me. There were 200 incoming students. There were probably a total of 12 minority students of the 200. No one looked like me. No one talked like me. No one was from my neighborhood. I'm working in social services. I don't know any attorneys. You know, I don't even know where the courthouse is. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, I'm not supposed to be here. And I just didn't feel like I had made a good decision. So what I did was I realized that when I graduated, I've never had a concern or a question about minorities, our ability to perform. It's never a lack of intelligence. I will never accept that. But I do believe sometimes it's the resource. We may not have access to the same resources. And so what I found was, as African-American students, a lot of us was the first person, we were the first people in our family to graduate from college. So we didn't know lawyers. We didn't have anyone we could call to help us with those issues. So Terri, one of the first things I did after I graduated, I said, you know what? Look, I have to study for the bar, and I don't have a lot going on anyway. I am going to work with the incoming law students, and I'm going to tutor you all to try to help,
Oh,
because
wow.
because what the word out was that we were having some issues with the retention rates for minority students. And so for me, it was like, it was never a question of their competence or their intelligence. It was,
Yeah.
they didn't have the same supports in place. So I work with those students on a voluntary basis. And because I had been doing it for so long and it was so impactful that the retention rates had gone up for minority students, they
Oh,
offered me a
wow.
job, a paid position as an adjunct professor at Duquesne. So I've been doing that since like 1998. I've been teaching at Duquesne. But the other thing that happened is the retention rates went up. But then I said, okay, so the other thing that happened to me, I was unemployed as a lawyer for a
Uh-huh.
whole year, right? So I said, look, what I'm going to do is also, I know a few people, fortunately, and I didn't know anyone when I graduated. I said, but let me start talking to the people I know and create some interview opportunities for people.
Yeah.
So it developed into this kind of this mentoring program where I would tutor first year law students, but then I also was able to get them tied in for job opportunities. And a lot of people have gotten interviews, and a number of people
Wow.
have gotten jobs that I don't know that they otherwise would have gotten. And I'm really proud of that. Very proud of that, because my belief is that if I can create an opportunity for one person, if they understand, then they're going to create one for one. We'll
Yeah.
create one for one. So
Yeah.
it's bigger than me. Like
Yeah.
it's so much bigger than me. But when you talk about the retention rates, you talk about job placement. I just feel like we will always be underrepresented in courts and underrepresented in the legal community if we don't begin to do that and create opportunities and leave the door cracked. So I've been very committed and very, very determined and intentional about helping people get through law school. And a number of those people there were a couple of people who were like about to drop out of school. We started tutoring and meeting, and they ended up graduating number 1 or number 2 in their class.
Oh,
So
wow.
that had little to do with me. That had nothing to do with me. But the point I'm making is to assist with that maturation and that
Yeah.
process, and then
Yeah.
help them find a job at the end. I feel great about that. And I don't brag about it because it's not necessary. But I'm
Yeah.
just happy to play a small role in helping people get on their feet, So I'm proud.
Thank you. Thank you for that. See, I like that I asked you because now we know a little bit more
Sure,
about Judge Elliot Howsie.
sure. All
Um,
about creating opportunities for people.
yeah.
We have to do that for people.
Yeah, and that's so important. That is so
Mhm.
important. And they never forget.
Yep.
And like you said, they teach somebody else. They just pass it on, pass the torch to somebody else.
Yep.
So
I agree.
we're great to wrap up, but before we do, is there first I would like to say, first of all, is how could someone get in touch with you? Because I may not have asked something that they may wanted to ask, or how can someone get in touch with you?
Okay, so we're on Facebook, and Judge Elliot Howsie on Facebook. Probably the best way though is the website, which is www.elliothowsie. I'll spell the name because people misspell my name all the time. ELLIOTHOWSIE.org. www.elliothowsie.org. And you can also email me at elliot@elliothowsie.org. And that's our campaign website. And Facebook, LinkedIn. So I'm around. I'm in the courthouse every day doing double duty. So I'm around. But yeah, I love to continue the conversation because I think it's important. I think people need to know, about the candidates. And I think I think it's short-sighted on us as candidates to just show up and think, we're going to get a job and that's just going to be it. I mean, this is a
life changer
responsibility.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot of good, as they say, you can do a lot of damage. So we have to have the right people in these seats, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Now, before we go, is there anything that you would like to say before we wrap this up, Judge Elliot Howsie?
Okay.
Is there anything that you would like to say?
So I learned this from a good friend of mine. She said, if you look at the stats, and I don't always look at the stats because sometimes the stats are wrong, right?
Yeah.
But she always said, if you look at the stats, 20 people will recall 20% of what they hear. So I always like to leave the people with the 20% so they can take it with them. And what that is simply put, we can't reform our court system going about the business of electing judges the same way we have always done. We have to take a different approach to get a different result, right? But I also believe it is because of my life experience, growing up in a low income community, working in social services, because of my work experience, working as a prosecutor, working as a defense attorney, working as a director of the public defender's office, making difficult decisions, playing a small role in
Yeah.
changing that office and transforming that office. But it is also because of my perspective. Like, I understand how people end up in the court system, and I understand what those decisions do to working class people. I understand the impact and the consequences of our decisions. When you detain a person, or you sentence a person to a period of incarceration versus probation, or you give a sentence of probation which is too long, right?
Yeah.
We're not addressing the crime or the behavior. We're just basically setting people up to fail. So when you think about all those things, I really do believe that I have some qualifications that have equipped me to continue to serve as a judge. I'm already doing the work as a judge now, and it's just a continuation of the work that I was doing in the public defender's office. And I really do hope that people will understand that. Hit me up, reach out to me. I love to continue the conversation, but I hope people will consider supporting me, because I'm not just talking about reforming the court system. I'm actually already engaged in the process of doing it.
Thank you so much. And so everybody heard it. And if you want to volunteer, if you want to call, if you got more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Judge Elliot Howsie. Thank you so much for again answering the call. And like you said, we will have another conversation because things change, and this is so important. So so if that's it, Western Power would like to say thank you so much again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right, but I want to say thank you to you, because thank you for caring. Thank you for taking a step and getting out front and bringing this information to people, because I don't know that they will otherwise have access to it. So it's important that you're doing the things that you're doing, and that you care, and that you understand the issues, right? Because if you don't do that, I don't know that we get the information, and it's so important. So I want to thank you for your efforts, because sometimes it's a thankless job that you're doing.
Yeah.
I want you to know how important it is. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for being on the forefront of that discussion. And if there's anything I can do to assist going forward, please let me know. I'd love to be a part of any discussions. I have so many stats and stories and things, and I love to talk about those things. But the bottom line is, thank you for the opportunity. And if there's anything I can do going forward, please keep me in mind, and keep up the great work. Please do.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There we have it, everyone. Judge Elliot Howsie, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You as well. You take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you.